Unipod, the podcast for all things management software.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Unipod, the podcast for all things management software. Today we have a very special guest here with us. His name is Theo Merlin. And I will just give you the stage right away to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you and how you got into the management software world.
Sure. Thank you, Sharan. Thanks for having me on the podcast. Pleasure to be here. My name's Theo, as Sharan so politely introduced me. I'm the CEO of Magic Booking, which is a childcare management SaaS, which automates all things extracurricular childcare. It's a company that was started in 2016, and I joined after graduating university in London in 2018. I entered as a web developer and kind of grew into different roles, serving different functions, and up until today where I am now. So that's kind of how I got into the management software world.
Nice. And was it a specific choice you made to go into this management software after you graduated, or was it like the way things rolled?
Kind of the way things rolled. It wasn't, I wasn't going after specifically the management software world, but it's where I ended up.
Nice. And are you happy with it so far?
Yeah, it's very rewarding. Building products for people that are used by thousands of people. It's challenging but rewarding at the same time.
Cool. Nice. I'm happy you are happy with your choice. So I think the first question about management software here that our listeners will really like to get your opinion on is what do you think is the difference between good management software and industry leading management software?
I think there are definitely some key differences. They obviously do share some commonality in that they, at their foundation, have to solve a real world problem. But I think the differentiality lies in the fact of what their capacity allows for them to do. And what I mean by that is, a good management software will get the job done. It will provide tools to users to complete tasks to solve whatever problem it is they're facing. But an industry leading management software will take it that one step further and kind of elevate the job by allowing users to complete tasks they may not even realize they need to do or want to do. I think a good example of this in the management software world is with reports and with the relation to Magic Booking. If you have a report and you're providing reports for a user, you have data. It needs
So
to be
just a
accurate.
second before you go into the story, can you tell us about Magic Booking, which vertical it serves, and what kind of management software it is, so our listeners will understand the story?
Okay, yes, sure. So Magic Booking is a childcare management software which deals with everything extracurricular activities. So managing bookings and payments, managing activities, managing registers, safeguarding, communication with parents, etc.
Nice. So it's under the childcare sector, but for after-school activities.
Exactly, yeah.
So it's used by the after-school operators or teachers.
Yeah,
Or
exactly.
both?
Our clients are schools and clubs, so the admins that run these extracurricular activities are our users. But we also have end users, which aren't directly our clients, which are the parents that are booking and paying for these activities.
Okay, so they also need to have your app.
Yeah.
Cool. And okay, and I think your interesting point was how you know your users even better than what they know themselves. I mean, kind of, you can put it that way. And when you really get to know them, then you can offer them things that they couldn't even imagine that they need, right?
Yeah, correct. Um,
So
like
can you go back to the story? That's
Yeah, the example I was saying is, if you're providing reports for a user, your data has to be accurate and meaningful, which is the base of what a good management software will kind of serve and provide. But an industry leading one will look at that data and say, well, why does the user need it? What are they trying to achieve? And they'll build on top of solving the initial problem of, in this example, just providing a report with data. Um, so I think that's one of the main the things that differentiates good management software from industry leading. And as a result of that differentiation, you know, your software becomes loved rather than just usable, and it becomes more part of your user's environment and ecosystem and ways of working in their day to day.
Nice. So yeah, I think you added here an interesting aspect about the emotions towards software. So I use many software, not necessarily management software, but there are some softwares that I really feel that emotion towards them. I mean, I use them, I can use the alternatives, but there is something about them that I love. I mean,
Draws you to it, yeah.
yeah, exactly. So, do you have so you said about the report and about knowing the users more than what they even know themselves, but do you have another example to how you make your software lovable? I really like that part.
Yeah, I mean, the main way I would say is when you're solving the problem that user is facing, to do it in an easy to understand, streamlined, efficient way. If you're doing something that's easy for the user to use, then by nature they're going to love it. And then, of course, you can expand on it by personalization and small touches here and there that can relate to whatever end user is using your product and make them feel, like you said, happy to come back to the software and use it in their day to day.
Nice. Interesting. So is it it sounds like you're really in touch with your users, so you get their feedback. How do you collect their feedback or know what they really want or understand exactly their needs?
Yeah. Well, that's a long process that starts from the very start when we're demoing to potential leads. We try to understand what their needs are, why they're looking for a system, what they're trying to achieve. And when they join on board, we have an extensive onboarding process where they're handed over from the sales team to the customer care team, where they can get set up properly in the way they want to use the system to make sure that they're getting the most out of it. And then after that, to make sure that they're continually using the system in the proper way and that they're getting the most out of it, we have our customer success team, follow up on them, take on their feedback, give them suggestions, and so on and so forth.
Okay, so you really have like a tight relationship with all of your users. So you said you're the chief operation officer, and it sounds like a lot of operation is involved in this process, and also a lot of effort. So what's your thoughts on this? Because it requires a lot from your team to go through all this process. There are some software companies that just lets you, start and you never even have the chance to speak to someone. It's a
Yeah,
chatbot that replies to you, and here you have like onboarding, customer success, all this
yeah,
hand to hand process. So yeah,
yeah.
how what's your thought on about that?
I mean, in our industry, we do have some people that are doing freemium models where you can just self-serve and sign up, etc. But it's very much focused on demoing to a client, onboarding them, etc. I think the way it's managed is by having every team member, involved in the process, understanding what we're trying to achieve as a team and a company, uh, in a more generalistic and global sense, buying into the mission of the company and what we're actually trying to achieve from the user's perspective. And if everyone has their roles defined and they've bought into the mission and they know what we're trying to achieve, they can it kind of runs like a well-oiled machine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So getting the teams aligned and connected to your priorities and your goals as a
Yeah.
company. Yeah. Nice. Um, okay, so we touched upon this a little bit. No, actually, I'll start with this one. So, to our listeners that are here listening to this episode now, what is the one blind spot that you see management software players don't pay attention to? And what do you think it is that they should definitely start tomorrow morning?
It's a good question. I think there's a lot of answers to this question depending on what industry you're in or what software or management software you're serving. Um, I can give you two answers. I'll give you a specific one and a more generic one. I think in the case of Magic Booking, the specific answer would be real world adaptability. Uh, I think it's easy to fall into the trap when you're building a management software to think too linearly and say, I'm building a software, it's going to be used by someone at a desktop or a laptop. They're going to be sat at desk in a calm environment. But in reality, that may not be the case. One of our core pieces of our product is automated online registers, which allows, users to mark children as absent, check them in or check them out of an activity. And we know that those users are usually not sat at a desk on a desktop or a laptop. They're walking around wherever the activity is held. They're using a tablet. And, it can be quite a stressful environment because if you're running an activity that has 50 children and you need to check them all in, you've got parents and guardians coming to collect their children. They want to be in and out. They don't want to wait around. But you have to follow proper guidelines. You have to make sure that safeguarding is in place. So you need a system that is going to allow you to, complete this function in a way that makes sense. And I think when you talk about real world adaptability, it always comes back to UI and UX. You need to have a UI that that is adaptable. In our case, able to be used on tablets, but more importantly, you need to have a UX that allows your end user to complete the function in an efficient and quick manner while still maintaining confidence that they know they're not making any mistakes.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Yeah, I think it loops back also to your first point about knowing your users and their environment. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
How does it affect the product design or the product development? But they need this flexibility to run around and mark the children and be very quick about it. And
Yeah, I mean, it affects the product design by nature because, I mean, in 2025, I think I would hope that most people are designing for every single use device type out there, but you have to work close with your key customers to understand how they're going to be using the system, and be adaptable to that.
I think that's interesting because yesterday I spoke to a dental management software leader, and he talked about something quite similar, but a lot different. So that's
Yeah.
interesting to compare the verticals, because in the dentistry management software world, you really sit at a desk. And
Yeah.
more importantly than being able to use the software on your phone, because that's not going to happen, or tablet, they need to be able to work even if there is no internet connection. So to work locally on their computer. So
Yeah.
interesting. I think your point, like, it serves a lot of verticals
Yeah.
and touches a point that is relevant for a lot of management software leaders, but maybe for everyone it's a bit different. So for you, it's
Yes.
tablets and phones, but for other people, it may be like the cloud or locally.
Yeah. I do also have a point on something you mentioned earlier about feeling that emotional connection to software. I think that's also more of a generic generally apply to maybe all management software, but it's a blind spot that people often overlook. Having that emotional connection between the software and the user, it's easy to forget when you're building a software that someone is actually going to be using it, a real person on the end. And people often overlook the implementation of like micro interactions and personalization, or like mini games within the software, which can take a tool from being a tool to something that someone looks forward to using every day.
Games. Oh, that's new.
Yeah.
That's like
Well,
gamification of the software. Yeah, I never heard
yeah.
about that. So what does that mean? Can you give me an example?
Well, I think the most famous example would be I mean, it's not management software, but you're reading the New York Times newsletter, and then at the end you have your word of the day. Or you're reading your morning brew newsletter, and at the end you have a little game that you can play.
Hmm. So you implement these kind of entertainment inside your software?
Yeah, these small pieces of personalization. It can also be very small, like greeting messages or quotes, or things like this.
Nice.
But
Oh wow, quotes is nice.
it takes it away from being something a bit mundane. It takes away from being a job to something that you look forward to. You can
Oh
take a break
yeah.
from.
Nice. It's even inspiring. So you're talking about like inspiring quotes, right?
Yeah,
Cool. I would like to, I would love to work on a software where I get some pieces of inspiration. Um, yeah, nice. And I also think this whole emotional aspect towards software is a very important piece that management software leaders often overlook if we talked
hmm
about blind spots, because usually, tech people really want things to work as fast as possible and
yeah,
be as beautiful and as comfortable as possible. But actually, the relationship, the emotions, the gamification, the inspiration, all of that is a really important aspect that contributes towards the stickiness of your software, right?
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's really nice. Um, so, is your software serving a specific vertical? We talked about it, right? So it's childcare, but I think it's also like clubs membership, right? It's not only childcare.
Well, it's childcare. Yeah, so childcare in the UK. So when I refer to that from the perspective of Magic Booking, we mean schools and private clubs that are offering extracurricular services for children. So it's anything from breakfast clubs to, holiday camps to football practice and dance practice, etc.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Um, so my question was, how does it differ from other vertical software companies? If you have like thoughts about this specific unique vertical.
Yeah, I think the way Magic Booking differs is that we are very led by use case specificity. And what I mean by that is we work very closely with our clients to understand why they're using the system, how they're using it, and what things are missing. But more importantly than what is missing, we try to understand how they would like to use the system in an ideal world. And that helps us to avoid just bolting on different features from different requests from different clients, and rather building out a kind of holistic, baked in workflow into a product that feels really built for a specific person rather than very generalized and broad.
Hmm. Yeah, and this is also an important, piece that sometimes management software companies miss because it's very easy to like go and develop all the features
Mm.
that you can. But the I think the differentiation part really comes in when you know your users, you speak to them, you know how they're going to use it. And like you said, how they would like to see the software in an ideal world.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
amazing.
I think it's just a question about understanding what the majority of your clients will want, and making things work in such a way where you're not generalizing to scale, but rather you're implementing features that work within the ecosystem of what your product actually is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I have another question. Like in every software or management software, there are a lot of features, and you probably have been around in the management software world and seeing like feature development. Is there a specific feature or something or user request that you saw really made a big change or a big impact on your software users, stickiness, engagement?
We have a very interesting feature right now, which I'm going to have to give you some context into how childcare works. There's this thing called tax-free childcare payments, which is basically a government scheme that helps parents pay for their childcare. To cut a long story short, it's a very manual process at the moment in terms of parents paying and schools and clubs reconciling. One feature that we are developing that we know will definitely increase the stickiness of our software is we're automating the entire process. So we've worked with HMRC, which is the tax revenue agency of the UK, to build out an API which will allow parents to pay directly on Magic Booking rather than having to go onto the government website. And on the flip side, we've built out a feature which will allow schools and clubs to automatically reconcile their tax-free childcare rather than the previous, way of working, which is you have to check your bank account, compare it against the bookings on the system, look that the unique reference numbers match, and then say, okay, yes, this is reconciled. I've received it. Um, and to give you an idea, we know that there are some clients out there that are spending, 2 hours for every 200 tax-free childcare payments that they get on this on the system or in general, just to reconcile. And there are some clients out there that are getting multiple thousands of tax-free childcare payments every week. So it's a big time save, and we know that it's going to really help with the stickiness and of the software and keeping clients within our kind of ecosystem and environment.
Nice. So how does this reconciliation feature differs from other reconciliation reports? What is this tax? What is the tax that you talked about?
So it's just a government scheme that allows you to help pay for your childcare. So a parent will pay in a certain amount, and the government will top up their account with a certain amount, so that they end up with a bigger balance and they're helped with their childcare costs.
So the parent pays less than they were supposed to?
Yeah, essentially because they're getting some contribution from the government.
Oh, and you make this process automated, so they don't need to pay the full amount. They pay only.
No, well, they're still paying the cost, but what happens currently is that if a parent wishes to use this scheme, after they book on our platform, for example, they have to go to the government website, they have to initiate a payment to the childcare provider, and then that childcare provider will receive that payment. So the way we've streamlined it is we've removed the need to go to that government website. You do everything from Magic Booking. We initiate the payment through the API that we've helped build with HMRC, and that way the parent never has to leave one platform.
Nice. Okay, got it. So, but then the childcare company needs to pay back to the parent, doesn't it?
No,
Or
so the
that's a
childcare company just receives the money from the government.
okay. So the parent from start didn't have to pay the full amount because they were already applying for the tax scheme from the government.
Yeah.
Okay, that's comfortable. That's nice. Did you see any effect on your payment volume when you did that? Did it help with increasing it or?
Well, we it's not deployed just yet. We're in beta testing, but we know that when um, it's released, it's definitely going to be a massive help for both parents and schools and clubs.
Nice. Okay, cool. And I think payments is a big part of your software. Correct me if I'm wrong. So, how do you see this option to pay with your software um, affecting your users, affecting the stickiness of your software? How crucial is it for them?
Yeah.
Was it there
Uh,
from the start? Did Magic Booking start immediately with payments?
yeah, no, payments is definitely a big part of our software. At its core, Magic Booking is basically a bookings and payments platform. So without payments, we probably wouldn't have anything. It
Users
was,
pay also for the software separately, or um,
yeah, our actual clients pay for the software subscription and card fee revenue. But the parents who are booking and using Magic Booking don't pay anything.
yeah, that okay.
Yeah. So we've had the option to make payments on the platform since the beginning. Um, and I think it's, depending on if your industry needs it and your software needs it, I think it's very important in terms of the stickiness of your software towards your clients, because it takes you from being a software that's kind of like nice to have to becoming a critical infrastructure in your users' work environment. If you handle the money that goes through your user's business, you become part of the bloodstream of that user. Um, so I think it's very important in terms of stickiness to have payments integrated within your software.
Yeah, I think some management software companies don't do it right away. So they start from developing the management software and giving you a whole bunch of other stuff, and then increasingly get into the payments world, just because sometimes it's intimidating, or you
Mhm.
think you need like a lot of resources, or a lot of compliance stuff. So, what would you say to those who think that way about payments?
Well, I would say that's not necessarily always true. I mean, most of the time you just have to get in touch with a payment provider and, work out a relationship, work out a deal, make sure they understand what your management software is doing, providing. And usually, the actual integration of a payment gateway within your software isn't extremely complicated. Um, but it's something that should definitely be thought about, because it kind of creates, once it's integrated, it creates a moat around your software. It creates kind of a barrier of safety, because if you become more woven into your end users' day to day and workflow processes, when it comes time for that end user to maybe think about reducing costs or optimizing or restructuring the way they work, your software will probably be last to go on the chopping block, because you're kind of part of that critical infrastructure where you're
You're
taking
in the
payments.
heart. You're in the heart of the
Yeah,
business.
exactly.
Mhm. Yeah, sorry to interrupt you.
No, no, no. You're bang on. You're in the heart of the business, and if you're in the heart, the closer you are to the heart, the harder you are to get rid of.
Yeah, exactly. Nice. Like that. So Theo, tell us, like, what's your biggest challenge right now?
Oof, biggest challenge right now at Magic Booking, I would probably say it's balancing growth with product focus. Um, as we grow, or as you grow as a management software company, you get increasing amounts of feature requests, of ideas, of comments. But it's really important for us to balance that so that we can not lose the sight of what the intention behind the product is. Um, and that just comes from prioritization. It's really difficult sometimes, because you get a feature request or a comment from a client and you're like, wow, we should have implemented this yesterday. What are we doing? We're missing out. And of course, if 1,000 of your clients are saying, you need this feature, then you should probably go and do it. But when you have one client saying something or two clients saying something, you have to really step back and think, how does this work within what we're trying to build? Um, so I think that's our biggest challenge, is balancing that growth with the product focus. And I'll say it's even harder when that request is coming from a lead that you didn't capture, because they said, oh, the product is great, but you're missing X feature. So you're then like, oh my God, I lost a lead because we don't have this feature. We need to go do it. But it's important to not go down that road and then, get a product that's kind of misoriented and not following its true purpose.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think it's common in this growth stage to like become a bit distracted or overwhelmed with the amount of feedback or requests, especially when you said that you really have this close relationship with your users.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can completely understand and relate to that. I think many of our listeners will also relate to that challenge in balancing it. So you're not alone, Theo.
I'm glad to hear it.
Okay, so a new trend, AI is all over the place. So I cannot skip this question and ask you, how do you um, see AI shaping your software or affecting the future of management software in general?
Yeah, I mean, it's the hot topic, isn't it?
Yeah,
I think
definitely.
um, I think AI is going to help make good management softwares, take steps into become industry leading just by the nature of being able to provide more tools to users to complete more tasks or become more productive with things they may not have thought about or known they needed themselves. And I think it does that by shifting the tools that they currently have from being reactive to proactive. Uh, and I think, the powerful thing about AI is that it can understand context. So like the example I gave about the reports, it doesn't just understand what a user is doing, but why they're doing it. And it thinks about what tools are needed to help with why they're doing it. Um, Go ahead.
Do you feel the urge to implement stuff that are related to AI, or are you like really careful with it and really trying to be thoughtful or considerate of your time with it?
I think there's a balance. I mean, there is definitely an urge into doing it because it's it is the future, but it was important for us to not rush into, just building everything AI, AI, AI. From an internal workflow process, of course, we use AI at Magic Booking every day to, just create more productivity for you know, important tasks or things that are kind of like throwaway that can help with just speeding things up. And for our customers, we have uh, pieces of AI in place for like non-customer facing things like, chatbot for the support desk for things that can be resolved easily with the knowledge base. But we have been quite careful into not rushing into it to provide something that's actually meaningful for the user.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I completely understand. So I think the balance is the key here, like you said.
Yeah.
Do you see any other new trends in the management software world in your specific or in your specific industry?
I do feel as though the big trend right now is the kind of like verticalization of software. I think there used to be many, different management software products which were focused on a very specific thing. But I think those kind of generic and general platforms are losing out to softwares that are quite deep and like niche specific and building out into their verticals. Um, because they're just not offering enough. So if you don't evolve into your vertical, you're kind of falling behind and getting left back.
Yeah, I mean, I can totally see that also happening. Like, childcare is not even a vertical anymore. There are much more specific sub verticals, and if you're trying to reach everything, you're basically not reaching anything, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there are a lot of verticals, but you can crisscross and mismatch and stuff like this, but you have to make sure that it makes sense for what your product actually is.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think with every conversation I'm having here, I realize how niche the sub verticals can get and how specific the use cases become, because
Yeah,
management software sounds like something pretty ordinary, like you need to have bookings, a calendar, I don't know, payments,
yeah,
and what what else you can possibly have. But then, drilling down into the brain of every single user, every single business, every single company, every single use case, you just realize how specific things needs to be. It's
you
almost
get into
like
some weird places, huh?
exactly. um you get to some weird places. That's a good way to put it. It's almost like it's on when I was thinking, when we were brainstorming about this podcast, it was like, can we even bring together all these management software into one community? Is there even a relationship or crossed lines between the different verticals? What
Yeah.
do you think?
I mean, definitely. You mean across different industries, or?
Across, yeah, different verticals.
Yeah, yeah, of course. I think even what you mentioned before about the dentist example, how it's similar they have similar uh, needs in the example we talked about before. I think there's definitely commonality shared between different industries, different verticals. I wonder what is the most niche thing that you've heard from doing this podcast?
I think the dentist thing became
Right.
like is, yeah, that's on top of my head.
Okay.
Um and he really drilled down into features that I couldn't even imagine. Like when you're a dentist, you need to have property fields for which kind of for so many types of treatment
Yeah.
that an orthopedic or a different doctor can't really use this software unless you like generalize the whole amount of treatments, which is not so which
Easy.
you can't really do because it's bracelets, it's hygiene, it's
Yeah. I mean,
so
if you
many.
started doing that, you'd probably have the largest software in the world if you tried to
Yeah, and then
generalize
and then
medicine.
you need to keep developing and you can't really grow because you're not focusing on anything and you get different requests from different users and suddenly you
Yeah.
have so
Too many tickets on the Jira board.
yeah, yeah. So I think that's right on spot, the verticalization trend. Um so like I think we're coming towards the end. So if there's like one advice or one piece of advice that you'd like to share with listeners or management software leaders or people that, just like you spontaneously got into the management software world, what would it be?
I think we've covered some good points in the podcast. If I had to give one piece of advice, I'll give you three pieces around one topic. Firstly, I think you really need to be able to solve a real world problem that is experienced by actual people, and you need to validate that they actually want a solution. Because it's very easy to think you've spotted a problem, and from an external perspective, it seems like a problem when in reality it isn't. And maybe the people that are experiencing it don't actually want it fixed. Um, so definitely find a real problem as a first step. The second step is, I would say, fall in love with that problem before you fall in love with your product. Uh,
Nice.
yeah,
Like that.
because it's very important to get deep within what your user's problem is, why they're having it, why they need it solved before you go on to building, because that will allow you to build something that's way more intentional and something that will allow you to connect with your target audience much easier.
Wow. Yeah, I think we just got the title for the for this episode, like fall in love with the problem before you fall in love with your product. I like
Yeah.
that one.
And lastly, I would say when you do build out your product and you come up with a solution, is to not lose sight of the original problem. You know, in development, it's quite known, you know, the job is never finished. You're always evolving, but you have to make sure that you evolve with your user, evolve with their industry, evolve with the original problem if it does evolve, and evolve with any new problems that may arise, because otherwise you'll become stagnant and others will do it for you.